It flashed from the woodwork and the walls. It smote him with an awful total power, as if generated by a vast mill. It rose from the floor up, out of the tattered grey wall-to-wall carpeting. It unleashed itself from the broken and semi-broken appliances in the kitchen, the dead machines which hadn't worked in all the time Isidore had lived here. From the useless pole lamp in the living room it oozed out, meshing with the empty and wordless descent of itself from the fly-specked ceiling. It managed, in fact, to emerge from every object within his range of vision, as if it, the silence, meant to supplant all things tangible. Hence it assailed not only his ears but his eyes. As he stood by the inert TV set, he experienced the silence as visible and, in its own way, alive. Alive? He had often felt its austere approach before. When it came, it burst in without subtlety, evidently unable to wait. The silence of the world could not rein back its greed, not any longer. Not when it had virtually won. He wondered then if the others had remained on Earth, experienced the void this way. Or was it peculiar to his peculiar biological identity, a freak generated by his inept sensory apparatus? Interesting question, Isidore thought. But whom could he compare notes with? He lived alone in this deteriorated building, this deteriorating, blind building of 1,000 uninhabited apartments, which, like all of its counterparts, fell day by day into greater entropic ruin. Eventually everything within the building would merge, would be faceless and identical, mere pudding-like kipple piled to the ceiling of each apartment, and after that the uncared-for building itself was settled into shapelessness, buried under the ubiquity of the dust. By then, naturally, he himself would be dead, another interesting event to anticipate as he stood here in his stricken living room, alone with the lungless, all-penetrating, masterful world's silence. Better perhaps to turn the TV back on, but the ads directed at the remaining regulars frightened him. They informed him in a countless processions of ways that he, as special, wasn't wanted, had no use, could not, even if he wanted to, emigrate. So why listen to that? He asked himself irritably. Fuck them and their colonization. I hope a war gets started there. After all, it theoretically could, and they wind up like Earth, and everybody who emigrated turns out to be special. Okay, he thought, I'm off to work. He reached for the doorknob that opened the way out into the unlit hall, then shrank back as he glimpsed the vacuity of the rest of the building. It lay in wait for him out there, the force which he had felt busily penetrating his specific apartment. God, he thought, and shut the door. He was not ready for the trip up those clanging stairs to the empty roof, where he had no animal. The echo of himself ascending. The echo of nothing. Time to grasp the handles, he said to himself, and cross the living room to the black empathy box. When he turned it on, the usual faint smell of negative ions surged from the power supply. He breathed in eagerly, already buoyed up. Then the cathode ray tube glowed like an imitation feeble TV image. A collage formed, made of apparently random colours, trails and configurations which, until the handles were grasped, amounted to nothing. So, taking a deep breath to steady himself, he grasped the twin handles. The visual image congealed. He saw at once a famous landscape, the old brown barren ascent, with tufts of dried-out bone-like weeds poking slantedly into a dim and sunless sky. One single figure, more or less human in form, toiled its way up the hillside. An elderly man wearing a dull, featureless robe, covering as meagre as if it had been snatched from by the hostile emptiness of the sky. The man, Wilbur Mercer, plodded ahead, and as he clutched the handles, John Isidore gradually experienced a waning of the living room in which he stood. The dilapidated furniture and walls ebbed out, and he ceased to experience them at all. He found himself instead, as always before, entering into the landscape of drab hill, drab sky, and at the same time he no longer witnessed the climb of the elderly man. His own feet now scraped, sought purchase among the familiar loose stones. He felt the same old, painful, irregular roughness beneath his feet, and once again smelled the acrid haze of the sky. Not Earth's sky, but that of some place alien, distant, and yet by means of the empathy box, instantly available. He had crossed over in the usual perplexing fashion, a physical merging, accompanied by mental and spiritual identification, with Wilbur Mercer had reoccurred, as it did for everyone who at this moment clutched the handles, either here or on Earth or on one of the colony planets. He experienced them, the others, incorporated the babble of their thoughts, heard in his own brain the noise of their many individual existences. They and he cared about one thing. This fusion of their mentalities oriented their attention on the hill, the climb, the need to ascend. Step by step it evolved, so slowly as to be nearly imperceptible, but it was there. Higher, he thought, as stones rattled downward under his feet. Today we are higher than yesterday, and tomorrow. He, the compound figure of Wilbur Mercer, glanced up to view the ascent ahead. Impossible to make out the end, too far, but it would come. A rock hurled at him struck his arm. He felt the pain. He half turned, and another rock sailed past him, missing him. It collided with the earth, and the sound startled him. Who? He wondered, peering to see his tormentor. The old antagonists manifesting themselves at the periphery of his vision. It, or they, had followed him all the way up the hill, and they would remain until at the top. He remembered the top, the sudden levelling of the hill, when the climb was ceased and the other part of it began. How many times had he done this? The several times blurred, future and past blurred. What had he already experienced, and what he would eventually experience, blended so that nothing remained but the moment. The standing still and resting, during which he rubbed the cut on his arm which the stone had left. God, he thought in weariness, in what way is this fair? Why am I up here alone like this, being tormented by something I can't even see? And then within him, the mutual babble of everyone else in Fusion broke the illusion of aloneness. You felt it too, he thought. Yes, the voices answered. We got hit on the left arm. It hurts like hell. Okay, he said. We better get started moving again. He resumed walking, and all of them accompanied him immediately. Once he remembered it had been different. Back before the curse had come, an earlier, happier part of life. They, his foster parents, Frank and Cora Mercer, had found him floating on an inflated rubber air rescue raft off the coast of New England.